And so I think we should translate the whole idea of image is that we are created as God's image. In other words, to image God, to be his representative. I think that's all it means. Okay, it is a possessed, as though the image is some quality or ability, a possessed attribute. That is not the point. It's functional, what we do, as opposed to something we have. But we are created as God's image. Go ahead and switch the overhead. Now, what that means, in respect to the question, is that while all humans are uniquely God's imagers on earth, this status applies only to humans, not to any other created thing, and it's specifically to earth. Therefore, there's no need to theologically resist the idea of intelligent ETs on the basis of the divine image. Who cares? We, humanity, has been given a special status here. We're to run things in God's stead. This is why, and the issue of capital punishment has come up. I'm not going to get into a political or even a theological debate over that issue. But the Old Testament is very strict. Whoever kills an innocent person, by man will his blood be shed. Because, Genesis 9:6, in the image of God made he man. When you kill a human being, an innocent human being, it is as though you are killing God in effigy. That is why it was so offensive. God took it personally. Okay, that is why the rationale behind the whole capital punishment debate from a religious perspective. And I think that fits in very well with the whole idea that we are created as representatives. We all have varying abilities. If the image was intelligence, what? If you're smarter, you have more of it. If you're less, if you have Alzheimer's, do you lose it? I mean, all these really questions that people don't think through, because theologians have perpetuated what I think is a mythical idea, a mythical definition of the image. And I think this really takes this argument away and allows for there to be no worry if there are intelligent ETs. Now here's the biggie. ETs are fallen angelic beings and therefore evil. Okay, again, this is, I think, is the most substantive objection, the one that gets discussed most. What is needed at this point, however, is to definitely separate the beings to which contactees and abductees testify and the sons of God in the Old Testament and ancient Jewish text. If you can separate what people are experiencing and what people, either through abductions or contact, if you can separate them from the records and religious texts of beings coming down, essentially having their way with human women and producing strange offspring. If you can put those into separable categories, then there is no problem in terms of a religious person, and you could, as you converse with some, or you are one yourself, there's no inherent problem with embracing the idea of an intelligent extraterrestrial life form, if those are separable categories. If they're not, then the question just transforms. It becomes a whole different issue. So can ETs be identified with angels at all, especially good ones, and so separated? There are 4 problems with that. Again, these are difficulties that you'd have to think through. Jewish and Christian texts clearly teach that angels are immortal and do not have determined lifespans. That's just one verse of about 5 or 6 I could list. Mortality would be required of ETs if there are indeed bodies. You got a body, you don't have an immortal being. I mean, it just, kind of goes together. Angels, Hebrew malachim, are always depicted in human form. There are no malach, and Hebrew vocabulary is very specific. There are specific words to describe different beings of what scholars call the heavenly hierarchy. At different levels, if you're this, you belong there. If you're this, you belong over there. It's a bureaucracy. It's a divine bureaucracy. Angels, malachim, are always depicted in human form, never non-human. The creatures of Isaiah 6, it's the great throne room passage, and Ezekiel 1 and 10, the Merkava vision there, the flying whatever it was in Ezekiel 1, these are seraphim and cheruvim. You notice they're not the same word. They're different creatures altogether. In terms of ET literature, only the Nordics really resemble the way angels are described in the Bible and ancient Jewish religious texts. Third problem, angels are never said to need flying craft to get from one place to another. They are truly extra-dimensional beings. And again, this idea is common in discussions of aliens and UFOs, so it's not something totally foreign. You only need craft, the operative word there is need, and speeds approaching light speed if you need to travel great distances. If we're dealing with a dimensional reality, you don't need them. Then the question becomes, well, why are they there? Maybe that does separate the two groups. I'm going to skip this note on the Merkava vision of Ezekiel 1. I think that whatever this was, I do not think it was what we commonly see today in pictures or descriptions as a UFO. It was real, though. I do believe it was physical form, and we can talk about that maybe if we have questions and answers. I have a whole set of overheads where all the elements of the description in Ezekiel 1 can be found in existing iconography, sculpture, pictures of Ezekiel's day. And if you look at how they drew what Ezekiel described, you don't come out, with some kind of Apollo 11 kind of thing or something like that. It's just totally different. And so I think Ezekiel should be understood in light of its own people, okay, in light of the ancient people that lived at the time. D, if ETs were to be misidentified in New Testament texts, or if angels were to be misidentified with ETs, then logic would compel us to accept whatever else the New Testament says about angels. Now, if you're going to make this equation, and you can tell I don't, that angels are ETs and ETs are angels, then logic compels you, if you're going to do that, to agree with these things as well. It's methodologically inconsistent to accept the equation and then turn around and reject New Testament testimony regarding angels in other respects. Here are some things angels do.
Persone come noi, che hanno un corpo come noi.
That have a body like ours.
In questi UFO,
And these extraterrestrial
che io prendo poi quando parlo,
vehicles,
lo prendo in senso largo, cioè anche delle persone che o sono dentro
he says, I'm using this in a large sense. Or the people are inside the craft.
ma questo è molto molto difficile pensarlo, oppure comandano, ma sono distanze enormi. Se si fanno vedere da noi, mica c'è un pianeta che è a 1000 chilometri da noi, se no a 1000 chilometri ci sarebbero già arrivati.
They make themselves seen and known to people on Earth.
Quindi è molto ragionevole che siano dentro.
So it's probably logical that they're inside a craft instead of coming from somewhere else without a craft.
E quindi sono persone come noi, composte di una parte spirituale, che la chiamiamo anima. Gli UFO, io non ho mai parlato con un UFO, non ho avuto...
He says they would have to have a soul like we
ma
do.
che abbiano anche un corpo, devono averlo un corpo.
They'd have to have some kind of body.
E se no sarebbero angeli.
Otherwise they would be angels.
All of these researchers seem to concur that these aliens want to come and give us spiritual messages. They redefine Jesus as an advanced alien. I mean, it would shock me. I've stood up in churches and guys have stood up and said, well, Jesus was just an advanced extraterrestrial. The Bible writers mistook him as, as God, when by virtue, because older on the evolutionary scale, by virtue of his advanced technology, that's how he could turn water into wine and raise the dead. So you can see these ideas raising up in the church. And in fact, the fastest growing cults in the world today are the UFO cults. And I actually include Islam and Mormonism in that, because both of those guys, both of those religions, if you like, were based on what I call the visitor experience, where they were visited by, an angelic being and given extra biblical revelation. And so that's actually what's happening to contactees today. They're writing books. They're getting all this extra biblical revelation based upon their contacts, but those contacts now appear as glorious spacemen. The same thing's been happening for centuries.
We listened very carefully to the ideas of Mr. von Däniken, which I tell you are preparing the way for the coming Antichrist. The Antichrist, a human political leader who will be energized by an outer space being whom we know to be the devil. But humanity will not call this satanic inspiration. They will say that it is help from our cosmic friends from some other star system or some other planet. The force be with you. Well, ladies and gentlemen,
Quote, Whitley Strieber, in his classic account of an alien encounter in the book Communion, records his experience with these entities, stating, quote, I became entirely given over to extreme dread. The fear was so powerful that it seemed to make my personality become evaporate. Whitley ceased to exist. What was left was a body in a state of raw fear so great that it swept about me like a thick, suffocating curtain, turning paralysis into a condition that seemed close to death. I died and a wild animal appeared in my place. End quote. Then, in a later release in a book entitled Transformation, The Breakthrough, he dives deeper into the experience, stating, quote, Increasingly, I felt as if I were entering a struggle that might even be more than life and death. It might be a struggle for my soul, my essence, or whatever part of me might have reference to the eternal. There are worse things than death, I suspected. So far, the word demon has never been spoken among the scientists and doctors who are working with me. Alone at night, I worried about the legendary cunning of demons. At the very least, I was going stark, raving mad. End quote. Then later in the same book, he states, quote, I felt an absolutely indescribable sense of menace. It was hell on earth to be there in the presence of these entities. And yet I couldn't move, couldn't cry out, couldn't get away. I lay as still as death, suffering inner agonies. Whatever was there seemed so monstrously ugly, so filthy and dark and sinister. Of course they were demons. They had to be. And they were here and I couldn't get away. End quote.
Trzecie objawienie było szczególnie wstrząsające. I to nie dlatego, że lipiec jest najgorętszym miesiącem. Chodziło o wyjawienie tajemnicy. Odbyło się to właśnie 13 lipca 1917 roku. Cała tajemnica zostaje wyjawiona podczas tego objawienia. Nie ma trzech tajemnic, jest tylko jedna. Pierwsza część to wizja piekła. Pastuszkowie widzą je w symbolicznej postaci, którą rozumieją. Piekło to morze ognia, w którym smażą się dusze grzeszników. Matka Boska powiedziała wtedy do dzieci: widzieliście piekło, do którego idą dusze biednych grzeszników. Żeby je ratować, Bóg chce rozpowszechnić na świecie nabożeństwo do mego niepokalanego serca. I teraz zaczyna się druga część tajemnicy. To ciekawe, bo podkreśla się wagę niepokalanego serca Maryi. Będziemy je czcić, szukając drogi do Boga.
I lay in the bed, still hoping something would happen. Suddenly I saw a light up in the front yard. It was a bright, beautiful white light shining on the grass like moonlight, but 10 times brighter. I got up and looked out the window, and this light with rays coming out of it, and the rays penetrated my body, some of them, and I could like taste his presence in the rays. It was the most extraordinarily beautiful experience I've ever had.
Co się dzieje? Jestem w środku. W środku czego? Nie wiem, mój umysł jest wewnątrz. Wszedłem tam. Byłem w środku. Wszystko w porządku? Jest ich chyba ze 20. Jak wyglądają? Plamy niebieskiego światła. Nawiązałem kontakt. Prowadziliśmy dialog. Kim oni są? Zbliżają się. rosną. Mleczno-białe światła zniżają się i unoszą. Wyżej jest coś większego. Otwiera się jakaś luka. Widzisz coś w środku? Nie. Co to znaczy? Miałem kontakt z inteligentną istotą.